Travis went good, so. Hope there was no foreign language stuff that I need to be concerned about. I didn't get to take Spanish in high school. I took French. Benito, I think, is good, isn't it? Masculine ending with O. Alright. So, there's some people who are confused as to what is white supremacy, as they are in denial of its existence, in denial that they are guilty of it, when they make comments showing that they protest too much. If you are upset and take it personally, you're guilty. If you're innocent, it doesn't faze you. It's a good lesson to learn, to be aware of what's going on in our nation right now, and across the world even. Fascism is going all over the world. And fascism takes the form of a supremacy of some kind, not just white supremacy. And so, for white supremacy, they hate the Jews. It's all about hate, and to enforce their hate with violence. And so the Jews are a target. The Jews did nothing to them. They just hate. And it comes from Constantine turning the Bible, the New Testament Gospels, into literal history, creating Jesus as the name for the Christ that he created himself, creating a brand new word that has no meaning. And they then, because it's literal history, naturally follows, well, it tells that the Jews crucified their Christ. And so they then blame the Jews as an excuse for hate. And so you'll hear them chant, "Jews will not replace us." They speak in terms of family ethnicity, preserving their family. They're not talking about mom and dad family. They're talking about the white race family. Denying science, that we are all of the human family, the Homo sapien family, as science has termed it. So they deny science. And it's kind of a hatred twist on Einstein with his evolutionary theory, or Darwin, sorry. Einstein was the other thing. The evolutionary theory, which can't be accepted as a theory because they've not had a test for confirmation. You have to develop a test for confirmation. We'll get to that here. And so white supremacists use that to say that they're from a different lineage back as part of their hate. And so other aspects, they hate women. Women are their property. They are sex slaves. And they need to keep silent. They need to stay away from men's work. And then blacks, as well as all colors that aren't white, they hate just for the sake of hating, because they deny science. They refuse to love, even though they claim the Gospels, which teaches to love your neighbor. They refuse even their own scriptures that they cling to. And of course, LGBTQIAPO+, because it's not natural, they claim. So they purposely are committing crimes as part of their discrimination and their hate and their violence. A crime is defined within the Constitution when you take away someone else's life, liberty, or property. Those three areas. When you burn a cross on another person's home, you have destroyed their property. You've committed a crime. Not to mention throwing rocks through their windows or lynching. You've taken away their life. And you can't justify it by saying, well, they're not human. But they do. This is why they are a terrorist organization. Because of the violence that stems from their hatred. The rapes of women that stems from their hatred. And when it's filled in the government, whether it be a local government, state government, or federal government, innocent people get locked up just because they are not of the supremacy, which in this particular case for this video is white supremacy. So people get wrongfully locked up, people get murdered, people have their property damaged, stolen, taken away from them. And I've gone over with you how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has done that to me. All because I deciphered the language of the Jews, Paleo-Hebrew. They took away my property. They locked me up without due process. And they've been attempting to murder me. All because language of the Jews. The 4 categories of white supremacy. So there is no doubt in my mind. When Mormons put their thumbs down, they're supporting the church's white supremacy. They're supporting my murder, my locking up, my theft of property. They are complicit in the crimes of the church against me. And so, how then do you develop theories to be tested? You first have to establish patterns from the physical evidence in the environment. And as you assemble the patterns, you will notice anomalies. Those anomalies need to be explained because they don't fit the pattern. So you develop a theory test which must be tested. If it's just your opinion that maybe someday somebody else will do the test for you and prove that you were right, no, that's not how a test works. It has to be tested in the moment you create it. That's why the theory of evolution is bogus. Because they aren't testing. They can't test. There is nothing to test. The Bering Strait, nothing to test. Can't do it. Big Bang Theory, nothing to test. They even say it's dangerous. Don't you dare test. It's false prima facie. On the surface, it is false and must be dismissed as a theory. It is not sound. There's what's called the Socratic method. in which you use premises to lead to the conclusion. And it must be logical. You can't use fallacies. A fallacy has its own Wikipedia page. It's all ordered and structured so that people can learn. You got formal fallacies and informal fallacies, measurement fallacies, intentional fallacies. But ad hominems are the most popular one that are used by Mormon apologists. When people who have done their research on the church history or the Book of Mormon will say they found the linguistic pattern of Sidney Rigdon in the Book of Mormon as the major author. Mormon apologists respond with, "You're an anti-Mormon, you're Korihor. It's biased, we won't believe you." Those are ad hominem attacks. You're attacking the character rather than what they were making the statement that the evidence tells us Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon. It is not something that Mormons can dismiss and disagree with or not listen to. They must accept it. The church leaders must be honest and come out and say, yeah, okay, Sidney Rigdon is the major author. We're from Brigham Young. He wasn't involved with any of that, so we don't know. We default to science to let us know about the real church history. But we're still going to preach love. We're not going to preach our white supremacist hate. Okay? So is that understood? There's this thing called critical race theory. It's only a part of white supremacy, in which racism. Critical race theory is a theory just like all the others. They claim it's critical, which means they use the facts and the evidence to propose theories to be tested. That's all it is. They cannot put it in the public school system because the public school system does not teach us about Socratic method, about critical thinking, about logic versus fallacy arguments. You may get some of that if you go into debate. But for the most part, the American people are kept ignorant on logic. The rest of the world teaches it for the most part. At least the European and Canadian countries. They teach logic to their kids. The Socratic method. But here in America, no. None of that. And so you can't introduce a critical thinking theory into the school system when there is no prerequisite education for it. When I went to the University of Utah, I took a philosophy of religion course that they started up. I had already taken it from the University of Lethbridge, so it was going to be an easy A for me. And I got in the class. There was a dominant alpha male Christian who did not take the prerequisite courses of logic as required in the curriculum. And he sabotaged the class. He held a secret web chat where other classmates could go and he could share his Christian views to overthrow the class. He had no intention of learning the methods for the argument. And so the teacher was overwhelmed during the class period, and he dominated. And the whole course was ruined. And this is not supposed to be happening in our school systems, in our higher education school systems. Christianity cannot dominate our education. They're already in denial of their own existence. They're denying Constantine as a historical fact, having created it. And so, yes, it's an easy, sure bet if you can get a Christian to follow the rules of debate. But they can't, because they automatically lose. And so they insist on dominating rather than playing by the rules. And it's the same with Mormons. If they're going to claim to be Christian rather than Joseph Smith's Jewishness with the Jewish language. This is why Brigham Young is a white supremacist. Took away priesthood from the blacks. Took away priesthood and priesthood office from women. We really didn't have much of an issue with gay back then. And so we can't assume, even though it's more blatantly obvious that he would have. But that's a fallacious argument to make. But yes, he hated the Jews. He wanted nothing to do with translator. Canceled that from his list of gifts. He took prophet, seer, revelator. Took over the presidency. But it's now the keys of Peter, James, and John, not the Jewish Christ, Moses. Refused translation, because that involves Hebrew. Turned Joseph Smith into a Christian. He replaced Joseph's Jewishness. This is what they mean when they chant, Jews will not replace us. Is they want to replace the Jews. And Brigham Young did that to Joseph Smith. The Book of Mormon is now another testament of Jesus Christ, rather than written in the learning of the Jews, as it says right at the very beginning of the book. There is nothing to defend this church as good. There is no argument that can be made. And any Mormon who will not stand against the church and leave are complicit. Because you're not taking a stand, but you're remaining with the church that is a known white supremacist group of hate. You can't be a fence sitter on this issue. And yes, Bruce R. McConkie was the one who used the fence sitter term in his Mormon doctrine to refer to blacks, because he's a white supremacist, taught from birth. Although I think, I think he was Mormon. I think it was his parents that were converts, weren't they? But everybody born in the covenant are born into white supremacy. I likewise. I was born in the covenant, but I rebelled as a kid against my parents when they tried to pull that stunt on me. I didn't know and understand any of it. I just knew I didn't like having my agency taken away. of years. Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where we, the area where we went. And we moved to Monticello, Utah. Looks like they both were, yeah. Okay, so yeah, they were both. My God. Yeah, they aren't understanding the difference between a Republican and Democrat, and they made sure to put that in here. They said that Bruce was a Republican and that his father was a Democrat. No, the Democrats pre-World War II were Republican in platform. And so the Lincoln Republicans weren't really Republicans in platform. They were Democrat in platform. Lincoln was a Democrat in platform. You have to look at the platform, not the title. Authoritarians, white supremacists, love to manipulate definitions, love to manipulate words to trick and deceive people. And so, I hope you understand that if this is new to you and you didn't realize you were, think about how the church has made you think about the second coming, as it's now called the second coming, rather than the first coming. How you go on missions saying Jesus. Joseph Smith was Christian. It's just other Christian churches were wrong. And as the church refuses to teach us Hebrew and Egyptian, they don't have a footnote for the learning of the Jews. They don't want you to learn the learning of the Jews. But for the second coming, you think that he's coming to a war against the Jews in Jerusalem. Because you don't know the learning of the Jews, their manner of prophesying. You've taken it literally because of Constantine. And so you think that the Jews are actually going to be slaughtered. And Jesus is going to come and save the remaining Jews and convert them to Christianity. And you don't see how that's hate. White supremacist hate. This is what the church does. This is what authoritarians do. We are taught this within the Book of Mormon with the story of King Noah. King Noah was wicked. He made his priests wicked. He chose them who were wicked with him. And he made the people wicked because they saw he was being wicked, so they can be wicked too. Became a survival of the fittest. And so the poor were punished. Same with the Zoramites. Over and over and over again, the Book of Mormon teaches that supremacy of any kind is wrong and dangerous and destructive to society. And we should have recognized it. But it was the church that we were born and raised into. There was can't remember the name of the movie. It's an old 60s movie, maybe 70s, in which a baby girl is raised up in the Church of Satan. So she grows up not knowing that she's being raised up to be a sacrificial offering to Lucifer. One of the old classic horror movies, but similar to Rosemary's Baby. That's a couple moves into the neighborhood, they've got a new baby, and the town decides to make the baby the sacrificial offering. So, I mean, yeah, this is serious, guys. When Nelson gets up and says, hey, I've paid Putin for a temple. We have no temple. What did Putin use the money for? Oh, he's used it for nukes. He's used it for the war in Ukraine. He's used it for hacking America. Nelson gave him the money. But he doesn't stop there. He keeps doing business with our enemies. China. They're trying to work their way into Saudi Arabia with the sister of the prince, the princess. They're our enemy. So, understand, learn, and do the right thing now that you've learned. Otherwise, you become complicit.